Hi, Brian Crombie here. I'm here at the Pork Credit Ratepayers Association all candidates meeting, and they're not allowing me on stage. For some reason, they're excluding me from being on the stage with 8 other candidates because they say they arbitrarily only want to have 8 candidates in this. They've got no other reasons that they've explained to me on why they won't allow me in here other than, oh, I registered late. I registered before the end of nominations. They should have allowed me. This is undemocratic. It's wrong. And I am so incensed that an organization that actually is all about trying to give people a better voice is excluding me from the debate tonight. It's shameful.
What we're going to do now is just right before the closing arguments, we actually have some of the other candidates here. We couldn't fit them all on the panel. So, okay, Brian Crombie is up as our first.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I apologize that I didn't have a chance to speak with you tonight. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. I have to tell you, my name is Brian Crombie. I'm running for mayor. I think you're being misled. The last speaker was right. Your taxes went up by 6.3%. When they say 2.3% and that it was modest, they're wrong. What they're doing is they're taking the Mississauga tax increase and they're dividing it by the Mississauga and the region taxes last year. If you divide Mississauga by Mississauga, you get 6.3%. And so, Steve, with all due respect, you're being fooled, or either he's fooling you. I'm not sure which is true. Last year they said it was a 3% increase. It was actually an 8% increase. The region increases are even larger than that. The average increases that you've paid are between 7 and 8% over the history, between 9 and 10% for the region. You figure that over 10 years, you know what that is? It's a doubling in your tax. If you're paying $10,000 now, in 10 years you're going to be paying $20,000. And there's a show on my show on Saga 960 tonight with 2 people from Myriad that have gone through this in detail and have reported it to the CFO, that have reported it to council, that have reported it to the press, and they've been stonewalled because they don't want to admit that their taxes are 3 times larger than they're representing to you. And I think that's a failure of democracy, and that you need to think about whether the councillors that are telling you that are the right people to elect to change things in the future. Let me give you 2 other quick points, if I could, on affordability. The biggest problem with getting more housing in Mississauga is red tape and regulation. It takes 3 times as long to get a development approved as it does to build it. The biggest thing that they could do is cut the review time by 50%. You do that, then developers are going to start developing. I was in Hamilton this morning. I had 5 people brought into the office by the chief planner. They said, you build this year, we'll cut development fees. You want to have some affordability for long-term care, for seniors, for housing below $500,000, cut the development fees. Affordability is the one major issue that I think that that need to be addressed in the city today. It's a major problem. My kids, I do okay. My kids can't afford to buy a house in Mississauga. I doubt many of your kids can afford to buy a house in Mississauga. And the people that have created the tax structure and the housing crisis are our current councillors. And so like George said, if you want the same thing in the future, elect the current councillors, and Carolyn Parrish is going to be next mayor because she's a wonderful person, but she's going to do the same thing that she's been doing in the past. And if you want change, consider me and some of the other people, because you've got 12 other people that are on this stage that have put their name forward that you should consider. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Hi, Brian Crombie here. I've just walked out of the TOPCO, the Town of Port Credit Ratepayers Group debate tonight. Regrettably, I wasn't invited to participate. I don't know why I wasn't. It was, I think, pretty undemocratic. It was arbitrary. Thankfully, at the end, they gave me 2 minutes to make a couple of comments, which was very nice of them. In the end, I think they realized they may have made a mistake. And there were a couple of other people that they invited up, also candidates in the audience, that had some incredibly good things to say. So, with 19, 20 candidates running, why they arbitrarily kept it down to 8 is beyond me. But more importantly than that, I want to talk about some of the issues that they were today. It was interesting that even the existing city councillors talked about how unaffordable Mississauga was, how tax increases are too big, how crime is too great, how the planning system needs to be changed. They're the people that have shepherded the last number of years. And if these are the people that have shepherded over the system for the last couple of years, and then they're describing all these problems. What have they been doing for the last couple of years? Just waiting until they got the chance to change it? Their job was to change it initially. So I'm really disappointed. I really think that, that old adage about rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic, or whether it's, Einstein's comment about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. If you elect the same people that have shepherded over our current situation, you're going to get the same result. I talked about tax increases, and John Mackey from Birmingham stood up and he said that tax increases weren't what the city had represented. They were actually about 7% last year. And then Steve Dasco, the councillor in Ward 1, stood up and said, well, our tax increase was a moderate 2.3%. It's misrepresentation what the council is doing. The way they get their numbers is they're taking the Mississauga tax increase and they're not dividing by the Mississauga taxes. They're dividing it by the Mississauga taxes and the Peel taxes, and they're getting 2.3%. Then they take the Peel increase and they divide it by the Mississauga and the Peel together. And then they add those two together, 2.3 and 4.9, and get the actual overall increase. Rather than saying, you know what, Mississauga went up by 6.3% and Peel went up by almost 10%. They're fooling you. They're trying to fool you, or worse, I think they're trying to fool themselves. Our taxes are out of control. Our expenditures are out of control. Part of it is I don't think the council's actually, they either don't know it or they're misrepresenting it to the taxpayers, but the taxpayers don't know it or something. And then we talked a lot about affordability, and I got to tell you, Carolyn Parrish, she talked about how the solution is to have a mayor's advisory with a whole bunch of the developers that will come in and say when there's roadblocks. That's not the solution. That's what you do when the system doesn't work. The system should work better, and the way to make the system work better is to get the red tape and the regulation out of the system, so you don't have to have a summit meeting with the mayor to solve your problems. You should have zoning that is more reasonable. You should have, I'm told that, on one street, every single person wanted to go get a deck, and every single person had to go for a minor variance. Well, if we're going to allow every single property to have a deck, then change the zoning that allows them to have the deck. They don't all have to go back for a minor variance and have to go through the whole hassle and process of going to the city hall. We should be having the approval review time period. That's the biggest problem. It takes 3 times as long to get things approved as it does to actually approve the projects. We should be reducing development fees. We should be increasing transit. I'm standing beside Brightwater. 10 to 15,000 people. There's not going to be one extra lane of roadway on Mississauga Road or Lakeshore or Huron, Ontario. This area, even though the development is spectacular, is going to be a congestion disaster. If your council didn't think through traffic, transit, congestion issues and address it. Lakeview, same thing. 25 to 50,000 people. Not one lane of extra transportation and no transit. It's going to be a congestion disaster, and your council stood by. I think we need change. And if the only people that are being invited to the debates are the existing councillors, you're not going to be presented with even the opportunity to consider change. On Friday night, at another debate, there was a 19-year-old young lady. She was passionate, she was articulate, she was spectacular. I'd love you to have an opportunity to listen to that individual. And I can talk about several of the other people on stage. They deserve a chance in our democratic system, with only 21% turnout, to actually shake things up and get up on stage and debate, not just talk to the existing councillors. If you're interested at all in what I'm standing for, please go to briancrombie.ca and check me out. Or check me out every night on Saga 960. I'm on at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. Thanks so much. June 10th, vote for Brian Crombie for Mayor of Mississauga. Thanks.